Location.
Absolutely.
I'd like to call to order the meeting, a special meeting for Shafter City Council, Tuesday, April the 5th, 2022. Let the record show members of the council present with the Chad Gibbons, our Pro Tem on Zoom, and our city manager on Zoom, and our council member Lopez is running a little later. I'd like to call upon Council Member Alvarado to lead us in the pledge and the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bow your heads first. Lord, we just thank you for this opportunity, Lord, to be able to serve your community, Lord, and we thank you for all the blessings you have given us, Lord. We thank you for everybody's health. We thank you, Lord, and we just ask you to continue guiding us and watching over us and continue giving us your wisdom. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. Okay, we need a motion to approve the agenda.
That motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Roll call.
Councilmember Alvarado,
Yes.
Espinoza,
Yes.
Gibbon,
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Any public comment? Anyone in the audience care to address the council may do so at this time. Hearing none, we'll pass up on the community or the public comment, and we'll go straight to management reports for fiscal year 2022-2023 budget workshop. City manager.
Certainly, Mayor and Council, this evening or this afternoon, two items we'll be going over with you. One will be a brief recap of the goals that we established last year during a strategic planning workshop in which we presented to you a number of different policy matters to you. And then follow up with Roger, our finance director, administrative services director, who will present to you our revenue projections for the upcoming proposed development of the fiscal year 22-23 operating budget for the city, which we'll probably spend most of our time with that. He's prepared a very thorough presentation, and we hope to engage you with that. And at the end of the workshop, with regards to the planning goals, is to get your direction that these are still aligned with your vision for the community and what we've been working on. And so that as we proceed with development of the budget itself, we will incorporate these policy directives into the operating budget. It's not to say that the budget won't include other projects, but these are those ones that we have previously discussed with you. As part of the agenda, we provided to you our draft strategic planning document. It's a high level, captures the main key points of our discussion. Our values, for example, is pursuing our vision, preserving our values. Our citizens are our top priority. Our employees are our most important resource. We operate on the values of honesty, integrity, respect, and ethics. We are a transparent government, and we are fiscally responsible. We strive to provide quality service with continuous improvements in how we deliver those services, all in the spirit of teamwork and partnerships. In last year's discussion with you, we covered 3 strategic focus areas, which was a compilation of different projects that had previously been discussed with you that we categorized into 3 different categories. One is the 2019 carryover policy items, near term, which are items that the directors and myself anticipate then having take place within a year or 2, and then future policy objectives that anywhere between 3 to 5 years that we foresaw taking place. But just by way of background, this was including the agenda, so if you're following it, it's in the document itself that was provided to you as part of the agenda item. And the 2019 policy goals, this was a review of goals that council had previously discussed in the past. For example, and council prioritized was to repurpose the former Public Works yard. That have been discussions we've had with you in terms of economic development and the best and highest use for that. You as a council have taken a policy position to not sell any city assets, in this case, city land, and you prefer to look for long-term revenue generating economic development opportunities to help sustain our operating budget long-term, and not just with a quick sale of land that generates proceeds, but one-time proceeds that we know can evaporate very quickly in these economic times. The other was a proposed fire station and police substation. Those are items that we will be discussing with the developer of those specific plans along 7th Standard. We have submitted to them a draft development agreement in which we do include terms that would allow the city to obtain through those negotiations a land parcel of minimally 3 acres for a combination proposed fire station and police substation. We are also undertaking the Nexus study, the AB 1600 fee study, that will allow us to start collecting impact fees, development impact fees. The 2 impact fees that we are currently in the process of analyzing and will be bringing to you here in the very near term are related to fire and police services. And so we are working on that diligently as we continue to move forward. The third item was the aquatic center improvements. I think you've heard from staff, we've shared with you that the city was successful in securing the state grant in the amount of $4.6 million total. Approximately 2.5 of that is earmarked for improvements to the aquatic center. We are awaiting the funding agreement with the state so that we can move forward and start the process with design and architectural and engineering specs and plans, but that is moving forward. So I think that's a very positive project consistent with your direction and for the community as we continue to proceed with that. City Hall relocation options. I think we recently brought to you an item. Our Public Works Director, Mike James, made a presentation to you. We established a staff committee to evaluate our options. And while we recognize there is a need to locate to a new facility, given the economic times and the financial costs involved, we recommended to stay at the current location as where we are now and to make some minor improvements, specifically the roof and some other repairs to the existing building rather than try to locate at this time, knowing the cost of a new city hall location, maybe beyond our reach now. Improvements and repairs to existing parks, lighting, electrical, turf, trees, amenities of existing parks, veterans park, parking. As you know, we have applied some of the ARPA funding for Veterans Park, for lighting, for basketball courts. We're doing some improvements at Kirschman Park for an additional infield. And so we are continuing to move forward with the implementation of certain projects, certain improvements at our city parks, utilizing both ARPA and CDBG funding for that. And even the most recent grant that we received, we do have some monies in there for some other amenities at our local parks. Any questions?
Yes, we're also using the grant money from the 4.6.
Correct. That is correct. Yes. Any questions on any of those, Council?
Welcome. No problem.
Okay. Hearing no questions, I'll continue. On the near-term objectives, as I had said, these were items that last year the directors and I identified as being policy objectives we would need direction in order to move forward. These are items that we saw that would be occurring within the 1 to 2 years. And those fall in the categories of, or the objectives of college transition programs. As you know, I think one of the key highlights here in terms of college transition programs is our establishment of our own municipal library. I think that further enhances our learning center and the programs that we have in strengthening not only our partnership with the high school and Richland School District, but also with Bakersfield College, as they are key partners in that project. And so I think that in itself and the work that has been done shows that as it relates to this objective in the college transition programs, David and his team and the partners that we have, work continues to take place on this particular objective. Water quality conservation objectives, our public works director and his team, our utilities manager, and Marcos continue to look for ways to improve our water quality. Not that we have major issues or anything like that, but I think one of the programs that stands out is related to the COVID-19 pandemic, specifically the successful grant award of funding to help some of our residents with their outstanding utility bills. And so that was a very good project, not only for the city, but for our constituents. And like I said, our public works director continues to work on these as we're part of the regional Sigma group and addressing groundwater and at times even writing letters of opposition of what is the State Water Board is proposing to do. And so that work continues. Our housing inventory and impacts related to legislation. Our new planning director, Steve, has made a couple of different presentations to you specifically related to SB 9 and SB 10, which is legislation that has significant impacts to the city in terms of development in residential areas. To not go into the particulars, but we know the SB 9 is definitely detrimental to local planning control. As it relates to our housing RHNA numbers, the regional housing needs allocation for housing, that's what we get from COG. The RHNA numbers is what cities receive across the state that relates to the different types of category of homes from very low income all the way to market rate. In terms of the inventory quotas that cities are expected to meet. And in this case, the city of Shafter has been successful at the market rate. And with the update of our housing element, those RHNA numbers will also play a key element in terms of how that housing element eventually evolves. We do know that the state HCD, Housing and Urban Development, have been following very closely other cities' updates to their housing elements, other planning projects, and they're really starting to enforce a lot of the RHNA numbers, as well as complying with the state's policy legislation related to affordable housing. But we will be starting that. As a matter of fact, our planning director came to you here late last year for us to be able to issue the RFP for a consultant so that we can start the housing element process. And so that will be going underway here soon. 4 was improving our city cybersecurity systems and develop our city intranet. That is the number 5, the city intranet is probably falling behind in terms of the workload. Item 4, improving the city cybersecurity system. We have made some improvements to that we made a comparison from the late 2020 ransomware cyber attack that the city experienced to now. There have been improvements. There continues to be monitoring and targeting type of programs that have taken place to test the city's vulnerability as it relates to our network. So those continue to evolve as new technology comes to scene, but those are still well underway in terms of achieving them and or accomplishing them. Number 5 in particular. In regards to the future policy objectives, these were items that we identified to take place within 3 to 5 years. And so item 1 was develop a city core business plan Our economic development director, or business development director, continues to work on this particular matter. And he is out there promoting, marketing the city. But we do have some more work to be done on this in terms of our business plan to be able to attract businesses that generate revenue. That's been the city council's focus and direction, that you want to see economic development projects that generate long-term sustainable revenue. So that's obviously one that more work continues to develop as we move forward. Replacing aging infrastructure. I think this is without saying that it's an ongoing project in terms of securing funding for our aging infrastructure, and in terms of water lines, sewer lines, our roads. We've been very successful with securing roads money from different funding sources at the COG. I think a couple of different areas that we can definitely continue to work diligently is some grant funding or other funding to address our water and sewer. We are co-partners of the wastewater treatment plant, but more so our collection system can use some improvements, and then our water distribution system in terms of replacing old lines in older portions of the city. Number 3 is discuss funding options to invest in city infrastructures. That more or less relates to 2, and also in the short term, and that is to invest in our parks and our infrastructure and our city facilities, all which we continue to do work on. The signage and landscaping, north and east. I think this is still one that we can do some more work on. Because of workload in other areas, we may have not focused as much on this particular one, but it's not to say that it doesn't rise to a priority level. It's just that we've had other opportunities to focus on other projects, street projects more so. Conduct a utility fee schedule. That's being updated with Roger, our administrative services director, coming on board. And then, like I said, we're also doing our nexus study to look at development impact fees. The City Hall substation, Gossamer Grove, I discussed that, and that we're presenting as part of the development agreement negotiations with the developers along 7th Standard, is to secure a land parcel for the future construction of a both police fire station out there on Gossamer Grove or somewhere along 7th Standard. Organizational assessment was to assess the operational capacity from a staffing workload. That is one that we have not commenced, but it's not also one that hasn't been forgotten. And I think at some point we do need to undertake this project, mainly so because we continue to grow as a city, and with each new rooftop comes additional services from water, sewer, maintaining our parks, service calls for fire and police, as well as service delivery at the counters, both in our finance department, city services, on and so forth. And we want to make sure that our organization doesn't get behind in terms of its capacity as we continue to grow. Our general plan build out, our current general plan build out estimates that we would be at 80,000 at full build out. We're currently at 22. Whether that 80,000 is a realistic number at this point or not is something that we would need to evaluate here when we do our update of the general plan. But nevertheless, we continue to grow, and we know we'll continue to grow because development, housing development, residential development along 7th Standard, a full build out could be anywhere between 7,000 and 10,000 new housing units. And we know that the city core has another 1,500 units of residential housing coming in. And so we know we're going to continue to grow here in the near future. And what we don't want to happen is our organizational capacity to lag behind. But as Mayor and Julie say, and other council members, we need to also identify that revenue to pay for those additional bodies or the additional capacity we're going to need to provide those services. So, Mayor and Council, those are the carryovers, the near term and the future policies that we have made progress, continue to work on. And what I like to engage discussion with you is to see if these are still consistent with the vision. And if so, then we can continue to work on these and bring them back the strategic plan for you as formal adoption with the budget. And as I said, we will continue to build these projects into the proposed 22-23 operating budget, whether it's in the CIP or the operating side of the budget, so that we can continue to implement and execute these objectives.
I have a question. I have a question about building out at Gossamer Grove with the substation, fire station, whatever happens out there. Do we have to wait until they start the retail commercial part of it, or could we even have it tomorrow? Are we far?
So no, the proposed combination fire police would, for one, it's economies of scale. It makes sense to do a combination police and fire,
Yes.
just from economies of scale. Two, Fire County, which is our purveyor of fire services, is a model that they have explored with their sheriff's department at a future site. So they already had some schematic plans for that. But to answer your question, no, we do not have to wait for the commercial development to take place for us to move forward with a proposed substation / fire station out there, either at Gossamer Grove or just near Gossamer Grove, somewhere on 7 Standard.
I understand we've been concentrating on it because of the impact fees and the costs involved, but yeah, but as far as construction, I mean, if we find a way or we get something, we could proceed then. That's what I wanted. Thank you.
Yes. And we have had a conversation with Chief Duncan, who is the new fire chief for the county.
Yes.
And they too have an interest to build a fire station along 7 Standard. They have a separate agreement with the city of Bakersfield to respond. They have an auto-aid agreement with the city of Bakersfield. And so if they were to locate a station on 7 Standard, that could potentially also serve the city of Bakersfield and the northwest segment of the city and respond to calls. And so in conversation with the chief, like I said, they have that in their plans as well. They know there's a need out here in that northwest. And so the county was in a position to move sooner, and whatever we might be able to do in terms of securing land or some other form of contribution towards it, I think that would only speed it along a little bit faster.
And I know we've been working on getting other funding, so it may happen. You never know that yet today. So
Correct.
good.
Do we have a list of all of the current housing tracts that are getting ready to expire and they do not have an available extension of time?
Yes, planning has a map that we've shared with you in the past, Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor and Council. I think we may have updated that. If not, our GIS coordinator, it should be an easy task that we can do that and with coordination with planning, and we can get that to you, Council.
Yeah, I'm just curious on the ones that, you know, like you said, full build out, you're in the 80s. That's which is it's large. But not all those are going to be full built out. And I'm curious on how many of those are actually going to expire here in the next, 1 year, 2 year, 5 years. And they don't have a chance. Like this is their they've already exhausted their last extension. So those are the ones I'm curious about.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get that updated, Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor and Council, and share that with you.
Any other questions from anybody?
I'm a little dazed in the sense of Gossamer Grove. I know it says right here on future policy objectives, number 6, City Hall Substation, Gossamer Grove. Is that literally like some kind of administration building, some sort?
Well, what was envisioned, Mayor, Council Member Alvarado, Mayor and Council, my understanding from what was envisioned out there is first the police substation and then the fire station. And recent discussions, I think, and it was previously discussed as well, as a fire police substation. We also recognize that there's going to be a need in the future for an extension of City Hall services out there in the 7 Standard Corridor. Not only, it may not necessarily have to be right there at Gossamer Grove, but we have Mission Lakes Heritage Ranch going westbound. And so at some point, I think that's something for us to consider. We may want to evaluate the cost and build an additional wing, if you will, not a very elaborate wing, but a wing with some office space there at that police fire station that would allow future placement of staff to service those residents, basically an extension of City Hall, whether it's planning, building, some of those more common services that we get.
Yeah, something more of a customer service.
Correct.
You have an issue with your water bill, or I don't know, maybe not water bill, but just some kind of service that we provide that they don't have. I mean, we would like them to come downtown, that's the objective, but sometimes convenience is always a plus, having something nearby. So.
Yeah, the core city itself should have, I believe that, and I know I've seen that on there too, and I didn't question it, but the core part, the big city hall needs to be in the core area. It's not out on far.
Absolutely.
No,
It's just,
and just
always
make
just some
sure we
kind of
know that.
administrative building or some kind of connection.
Right.
Some, like you said already, substation of some sort.
Well, and you say just a customer service section of
Yeah.
it. That's fine.
So,
And again, I think from economies of scale, it probably makes sense, Councilmember Alvarado, Mayor and Council, to incorporate. As we all know, city facilities are built basically the one time, and they look to stand for the next 30, 40, 50 years. It's not something we look to constantly build. And so it may make sense economically in planning for the future to incorporate just a separate wing for administrative services in the future. Could be, like I said, even animal control, on how to license your pet or whatever, information like that, yard sales, permits, so it's definitely something we will keep that in mind as this particular substation project continues to evolve.
So just my last question, now that we're talking about this, just what is going to be the max build out in Gossamer Grove? Do we have some kind of number or some idea?
I believe, and I know I have Dennis on the call, but the number I've heard is approximately 3,400 for Gossamer Grove itself.
3,400 houses?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, for Gossamer Grove. And then Mission Lakes and Heritage Ranch, I think combined may add, I got Steve on the call. No, Dennis, can you provide that number? Do you have that handy?
Yes, I do. It looks like the Heritage is about 500. The ultimate build for Gossamer was roughly where you were, about 3,500. But I think with high-speed rail, they're going to finish right above like 2,000 and leave that upper remaining piece alone until we figure out what happens with high-speed rail. And then the Mission Lakes is, I think, 5,300 plus. I was thinking it was, I don't have the full number, Gabriel. I think it was close to 10,000 though.
Yeah.
But I can get it for you.
That's 10,000 for all 3 developments?
Yes, that's correct.
So you got 10,000, you average what, 4 per house? What is that? What's that total?
Yeah, I think we're projecting, so it's 3.2 or 3.4. Planners use that number. So let's just say 3 per household, 4 times 10,000 units. Using that, I mean, that's another 40,000 total.
So you have 40,000 people that we have to service. And I think, having we're talking about justification of a city hall substation or some kind of extension, I think for 40,000 people, that's almost a whole new town.
Yeah, most definitely.
So, okay. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you, Dennis.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have anything? No?
I have a question on the houses that we have coming into the core and the stuff that's being built out at Gossamer. And SB 9 and SB 10, I know those passed. Are those in play already, or is that still going through courts? I know some people have been petitioning those measures, and or are people already working on trying to split lots?
So the first part of your question, Councilmember Espinoza, Mayor and Council, is that yes, SB 9, SB 10 took effect January 1 of 2022. The second part, answer to your second question is there existing litigation taking underway? The question is yes. There's a handful of cities in Southern California that came together. For the record, the city of Shafter is not part of that litigation, but these are a handful of cities in Southern California that have filed a suit against the state. Basically, the premise of the lawsuit is that the state does not have the authority to impose on cities their local control in terms of how the cities develop. And they're arguing that development at the local level falls the responsibility of cities and not the state, and that SB 9 is unconstitutional and illegal, and that the state doesn't have the authority to impose that type of legislation on cities. I'm not an attorney, but I'm familiar with that, having read recent news articles about this lawsuit that is taking place. It has not gone to the courts, and so everyone will be waiting anxiously to see how the courts rule on this. It could be that this is unprecedented laws that could result in it going all the way up to the California Supreme Court. But there is litigation underway from a handful of cities located in Southern California against the state on SB 9. The third part of your question, have we had any applicants applied? My understanding that our planning department has received a few inquiries about this type of development in residential area, but the applicants quickly realized that it's not a type of project they may want to undertake because of the city's requirement that it be owner occupied for a certain period of time. And so since the law took in effect January 1 till now, that I'm aware of, we do not have an actual application that has been submitted for this type of development in the city.
Steve Asselman, Planning Director, just real quick to parlay what the city manager said. It's correct. Some people have given us inquiries as soon as we tell them that one of our objective standards is that you need to sign an affidavit saying you will live in one of the dwelling units that are developed as a result of an SB 9 lot split. That pretty much stops the conversation and it ends it right there. So far we've had a few inquiries, and we've quickly, once we give them our requirements, we don't get a follow-up inquiry. That's been our history so far. So the fact that we got those objective standards in through that urgency ordinance early or very late last year has really helped establish that, so that we can give them the rules of the road. And they generally, the ones that want to flip properties and double the density, on a large development, realize they can't do it unless they can get, 50, in-laws to live there for 3 years or so, something like that. So that's been very good for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment on that. Councilmember Espinoza, Mayor and Council, since you mentioned any litigation, the state attorney general has sued or threatened to sue some cities in recent times that are, in his opinion, a violation of SB 9. There's a city, affluent community up in the Bay Area that tried to state or pass an urgency ordinance declaring themselves a habitat for, I think, mountain lion or some little four-legged critter like that. And they basically declare their entire town as a natural habitat, and that therefore they couldn't build this type of housing in compliance with SB 9. as a means to discourage this type of development. And the Attorney General came down and basically made the city null and void their urgency ordinance objective criteria. And in that same news article, he's quoted as saying that his office will be diligently looking to cities that may be in violation of SB 9, because according to the state, there's a affordable housing crisis going on.
Okay, thank you.
There is an affordable housing crisis going on. I get it, but you can't build anything affordable with the market conditions right now. Our legislation in California isn't the smartest of legislations. You can't build anything affordable. And that's proof with how many housing tracts we have opened, but no one doing anything with them. The development costs are very high.
Well, we would hope that that doesn't continue for long, so we still have to be prepared, right?
Correct. No. And remember, there's nothing to say that the state has any common sense, just my comment. So Mayor and Council, with that concludes, and then there's no further questions. Like I said, just from a direction from you is if these are still aligned, we will proceed with bringing the strategic plan for your adoption as part of the budget, and we will continue to incorporate these into our proposed budget for 22-23. And like I said, once the budget comes to you, you of course at the council discretion level, you can still always add other projects as you deem necessary, consistent with the vision for the community and the long-term vision. And so you still have an opportunity. This does not preclude you from doing that. And this is only a piece of, or a number of the projects that we will, and objectives that we will build into the budget.
You know, I guess I should say too, it's kind of slow process today. I mean, what we've experienced in the last couple of years and where we are today with the supply and demand and just everything that's going on. So just by waiting and being prepared for the future is the best thing to do, because there's some pretty immediate needs that we just don't have an answer for. And we know the growth is going to come to the valley. We know that for sure. And so, yeah, we're going to have to look at some of these issues in a much broader light.
Mm-hmm.
Much broader. Okay, so you're finished with yours?
Yeah, so a thumbs up, is that okay with you? I mean, it's a workshop, but just some direction would be helpful for us.
Very nice.
Well, it's there to keep moving forward, and we have made progress in this last year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was pretty obvious what happened here in 2021 was kind of deflating, if that's a word. I mean, it just didn't move very well, and our report shows that too, but you know, we're still holding our own. So that's good news.
Yeah, you can say we took a course from that song, Wind Beneath the Wings.
Yeah, somehow, yeah.
All right, well, that concludes my item, Mayor and Council. Next up is Roger to talk about our revenue projections for proposed 22-23 operating budget. So with that, Roger.
Okay, are we just doing your current one here? Okay.
Good evening, Madam Mayors, council members. So this is a presentation regarding revenue projections for the 22-23 fiscal year. So one of the first things we do is we need to understand our projected revenues and what we have available as resources for the next fiscal year. And so this is one of the first steps that we have. So for the citywide projected revenues, we have a proposed amount of $53.5 million. It's somewhat, the number needs to be broken down by general fund and enterprise funds, so I'll go into those details, but I wanted to give you a perspective. For historical comparisons, I'm excluding the CCF revenues from the past so that we can look at better comparisons. I'm also excluding internal transfers of monies. So the 53.5 million is composed of the vast majority within the general fund. The revenues come from general fund at $37.9 million or 71% for the next fiscal year. The next big item is at 18% or 9.6 million on the enterprise funds. Impact fees is a significant amount of 6% or $3.4 million. And the last but not least is special revenue funds at 2.6 million or 5%. On a historical perspective, we have on citywide revenues, if you look at the general fund, you can see the growth, general fund revenues. And then we have the enterprise funds, impact fees, special revenues, and the total. And so as you can see, the $53.5 million that we're projecting for next fiscal year, which it does have a slight increase, especially from the general fund component. It is worth noting that we're still fine-tuning the refuse component because there's some changes there. This chart comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it provides a 10-year consumer price index. And it's kind of a, as we are all aware, the inflation is taking a toll on all over with communities and families. But it also is an important component of the discussion, because if the Fed decides to increase the rate, then that could potentially trigger a recession, which we have seen that in the past. It could trigger also higher unemployment. So it is worth noting that the inflation is rampant, and it sounds like it's here to stay for a while. The reason why it's here to stay is because the Fed has announced multiple hikes in the near future. This is the California versus the Kern County historical unemployment. And this gives you a long-term view. And as you can see, this is the pandemic point, and it has been improving, which is really good news that it's been getting better. This is also a comparison, but this is more from the more recent, from the pandemic. The previous slide provided a longer view, but this one provides from the pandemic until now. As you can see, some improvements on the unemployment. This is more of a focus on the general fund revenues. And as you can see, a historical perspective on taxes. On grants, we do expect some significant grants that has been awarded to the city of Shafter. And we can view the license and permits, fees for services, others, and the total. So the reason, one of the main reasons why we have a significant increase from the previous years is mainly from the grants component that we're expecting to receive. So we have that.
So I have a question, Roger.
Yes.
On grants, is it because of something that we've never done before, is get grants, or from previous years?
Well, we do have revenues from grants but it's not part of the general fund, usually through the TDA or which is a different, it's part of the special revenue funds. Whereas this is from the general fund, where the grants that are that we're going to receive for the $4.5 million, it's going straight to general fund for the parks and the projects that you have authorized.
So this is the first time we've explored or experienced or exercised a grant opportunity?
I wouldn't, I'm not sure that that would be the case because the other grants could be part of the general revenue funds.
Councilmember Alvarado, there is, with Proposition 68, over the last few years, there's a significant uptick in grant opportunities and favorable grant opportunities, some with minimal local match that the city's been able to take advantage of multiple grant cycles within the last few years that we're not accustomed to seeing through the state at least.
Okay. Thank you.
The next slide focuses more on the taxes. So previously, you can see the biggest component at about 80% is comes from taxes on the general fund revenue. So the next slide focuses on taxes. So here's the breakdown. You can see the biggest portion is on sales taxes. Then we have property taxes in lieu of vehicle license fee, franchise tax, and the total. So that's what we're projecting for next year. The consultants help us with the sales tax portion, and so we're grabbing their estimates and incorporating into the budget. And this is more of a focus on the sales tax alone, historical perspective. And this has a year-over-year percentage change. So what this means is that from the fiscal year 18 to 19, there was a close to 18% increase. And from the year 19 to 20, there was a 20% increase. And so you can see year-over-year changes on the sales taxes. So as you can see, what is being proposed, we expect to have a slight increase for the next fiscal year.
That's not too bad for being that was actually the COVID era, right?
That is correct. I would agree with that statement. Yeah. So what I'd like to show you on this table, I think is very telling of what those taxes mean. So if you notice, going back to the previous sales taxes, if we look at the growth, and if we combine the general fund revenues growth, then this table summarizes that over a 4-year period. And that is from fiscal year 18 until fiscal year 21. And what this tells us is that for sales taxes, there has been a growth of 8.5%, 4-year growth, annual growth. And then you can look at the property tax and the property tax in lieu of vehicle license fee, with the highest growth at the franchise tax level, for a total general fund combined growth of 8.5%. This is a long-term view projection of the consultants. And this is obviously no one can tell the future. And so the longer we go into the future, we want to be careful as to how we view this chart. But I did want to point out that 21-22 projected, and then the 22-23, which is the proposed budget. This is what we're grabbing, this number for the next proposed year. And then you can kind of see, based on their estimates, the consultants' estimates, how the long-term view looks like Obviously, a lot of it depends on the economy and also the new businesses that we can manage to bring in and maintaining the existing businesses. This also comes from the consultant, this second chart. And this is a really interesting chart because it breaks down by the annual per capita sales tax for the fourth quarter of each year. So if you look at the fourth quarter of 17 and then 18, 19, and so forth, then you can see the breakdown of the retail taxes versus the construction and business to business. And you can see the breakdown. As you can tell from the county poll, there's been a significant increase on the from internet sales. And then you can see also the changes that come from this. What I've done is I took these numbers from this chart and I translated them into the annual growth so we can see what's happening here on the different areas, on the different categories. So this information it comes straight from the previous chart. And you can see that the retail, there's been a 5-year growth from the fourth quarter of each year at a 10.1%. But then you can also see what's happening with the other ones, especially with the business to business. The highest growth has come from internet sales, and for a total of 3.6% 5-year growth.
So that's what county pool stands for, internet sales?
Yes, so this is from the internet sales, as opposed to the local business to business or purchases. Now we jump into the enterprise funds. And on the enterprise funds, we can see a breakdown of the water fund from a historical perspective. And we can see the projection or the proposed at 5 million for water fund. Wastewater, refuse, again, we're still reviewing some of those numbers, especially on the refuse side. Transit, there's been we expect a decrease from the transit, but there's been a high growth from the previous years. Fiber, and then the total for the enterprise funds. This is the 4-year growth for each one. So each of the previous funds that I showed you. If you notice, the transit is very high growth, but this changed completely during COVID. So this is going to change once we get close the year because of the inactivity on rides. So high growth overall on the enterprise funds. Special revenue funds, we have the streets TDA, the gas tax, the lighting maintenance district, and the total. Again, this is the 4-year growth for your benefit. It's an impressive growth here, and a lot of it is because of the cities keeps growing and growing. From the capital projects, we have the main one is the water connection we have, and then we have the impact fees, the wastewater impact fees, and then the water for a total. And this is what we expect for next year. So this is what I have for you. If you have any questions.
Any questions, maybe?
Yes, I got one. Let me see where I made that note. On the 10-year consumption price index, you mentioned inflation. You said it was here to stay for a while. what's gonna be our biggest challenge with that?
Well, we should expect some increases on the expenditures on the fuel side and other operating expenses that we're working through. We're trying to identify those. That's on the short term. But the risk side is the unemployment. Usually when you raise interest rates, there's more unemployment, which could trigger a recession, and that is going to have a direct impact on sales taxes. And so that's more on the midterm. If the recession it stays longer, then the property taxes could have an impact on the long term. So midterm is the sales tax if there's a potential recession. But the immediate impact is the increase on cost, operating cost.
Okay, thank you.
I know I keep going back to this every year, but just to confirm, are we touching that general fund loan to the water and or sewer enterprise?
So we had a discussion with Public Works Director, and this is something that council may have an interest in looking at during the budget process to potentially tap into the ARPA funds for some water and sewer projects potentially. So we're assessing the cash flow needs for water and sewer and see if we need to take advantage of if we have a need for a loan. So the loan has been approved in the past, but we're still analyzing that.
Okay, so we haven't touched or used it. If there's a need for it, you're saying there's a chance we can just use ARPA money instead?
Yes, we have not put money from the general fund yet. But we still have the option of tapping money from the ARPA, depending on what council decides. Or if we determine that the expenditures are exceeding the revenues, then we'll need to borrow the money or use the ARPA funds.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Just to add a quick comment on that, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, Roger's referring to the second installment of the ARPA monies, which is approximately 2.4, of which the city has not received, but we're slated to get on or about June of this year, which the city has not had an opportunity yet because we've not received the money. So that's the second installment that Roger's referring to in terms of the ARPA funding.
Anything else, guys? Any other comments? Could be pretty sad if we didn't have what you just gave us, because then what would we do? But it looks good. It looks good to keep going on. And let's hope others join in. I mean, we don't want to have catastrophe happen within our own city, so.
Thank you for the report, Roger.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anything?
Mayor and Council, I say that concludes our staff presentations on those two items. We have nothing further to present.
Okay, then going back to our agenda, and I'm not even sure where I have it today right now. There's nothing else on there, then we can have a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We are adjourned.